everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got such a fun project for you today. This is kind of a heart project for me. Years ago, when I started teaching, I decided that it would be fun to collect something from every place that I went. So I started collecting irons. And so I have this huge collection of irons, and in my studio there are big tall shelves, and they are just filled with irons from all the places I've been. And one time my friend J Wecker Frish from Great Joy Studio came to visit me, and she saw all the irons and she decided that she wanted to do a line of fabric. Well, you can imagine how tickled I was and how tickled I am now to be able to present it to you, because it all came as this fabulous line with this fabulous panel. And this panel I have made into the quilt behind me, and it features some of my irons. So I'm super excited to share it with you. So this is the panel right here, and I decided that nothing is better than surrounding the irons by loads of patchwork. And so I'm calling this tutorial Pressing Patchwork. And so I'm super excited. I want to show you some of these irons. So like you can see, like this guy right here is here. This little red one right here, see him with this blue paint? There he is right here. And then this is a crimper, and there's a crimper on this panel as well. And a crimper is irons pleats. And so you would think that out of all the irons I would have some duplicates, but I don't. There are a lot of different irons out there, and they're just really, really fun. So let me show you how to make this quilt. So to make this quilt, you're going to need one packet of 10-inch squares, and we have used this press-on by J Wecker Frish for Great Joy Studio for Riley Blake Fabrics. Janet designs for Riley Blake. You're going to need a panel, and or you can, this is an 8-inch square, so it's based on an 8-inch square. So if you have some fabric that you don't want to cut and you want to put in there, this is a great place to do it. You're going to need some accent fabric, and of that you're going to need 1 yard, and we use black, and that was to make these little borders around the little separate panels, and so to make them really pop. You're also going to need some border yardage, and the border yardage is so fun because it's, if you can see it, it's cords, old iron cords, and a plug, and it's just very fun. So I have a nice border out here. It is the outer border is 1 3/8 of a yard, and it's a nice 6-inch border. So for the backing, I use this fabulous fabric. Let me show it to you. Look at this. Look at all those irons. They're just so beautiful. And this is great because it's a 108. So of the 108, you're going to need 2 1/4 yards. Now, if you use regular fabric, because you're making this size of a quilt, you're going to need 4 3/4 yards. And then I want you to look out here on the very edge of my border. I did a little red binding, and the binding, you're going to need 2 2/3 of a yard for the binding. And it just sets it off. It just pops it. So let me show you how easy it is to make this quilt. All right, so to make this quilt, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut out your irons. Now I have 20 irons in here, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows by 5 rows of irons. So 20 irons, and 20 comes in a panel, and you're going to cut them out on the dotted line right here. You're just going to trim them out right here on the dotted line. This is an 8-inch square. When it's all trimmed out and ready to go, it becomes an 8-inch square, just like this. And so now what you have to do, what I had to do, whenever you have a panel, you have to figure out how to make the rest of it match up to your panel. So to do that, I took some 2-inch strips of accent fabric, and I made a little border so that it will match up perfectly when I start putting this patchwork together, which I'll show you in a minute. So let's start with our little panel square, and I'm going to sew my border strip on both sides and on top and bottom. So we'll come to the sewing machine and do that. And I'm just going to come along here, sew 1/4 inch. Now, when you're doing these little pieces to match things up, you do want to make sure that your 1/4 inch is pretty accurate. So just lay it along your tape or along your line, and just make sure that you're pretty close to where you want to be as far as that 1/4 inch. All right, I'm going to flip this around and sew the other side. trim it off. I'm going to press these back. And so these two pieces right here, if you want to subcut them, you can do that. They're 8 inches. So now I'm going to add this strip to the top and bottom. And so lay that right across there. And we're going to trim this off. And I am just kind of, you know, scrappy trimming it. I'm not making sure it's perfect because I'm going to square this at the end. All right. Now we'll press this open. And because I'm not perfect, and I don't worry about being too perfect, I know this is going to have to be squared up. So I'm going to press this. And I want it to come out to 10.5. And so it should come pretty close, but there'll be a little bit of extra. See how that's just a little bit right there. So we're going to go ahead and trim this up. And it's just little bits that are off. And that's just because I'm not a perfect sewer. And that's all right with me. All right. Let me lay that right on that edge. And just a little bit of cleanup over here. And then you're going to do this to all your blocks and they'll pop just like this. Now we need to sew the patchwork together. And that's kind of a fun thing to do because we're going to take 5 different pieces of fabric. And I will go for different colors, ones that have a lot of contrast. And let's see, we got a pink here. And her prints are so fun because she uses letters and old pictures to make her art. Look at these little girls with their ironing boards. The whole thing is so sweet. Let me find a nice little, oh, how about this cords? Green will be fun. All right, so stack those all up really nice and keep the edges together. And then we're going to cut these in 2.5-inch strips. Like this. Wait for it. Hang on. I'm over just a hair on that bottom. So you can do this to your whole layer cake and really scrap it up, but you'll only really use 32 pieces. And so what we're going to do now that we have these cut into 2-inch squares is we're going to start sewing them together by 2s. And we're going to make a strip set of 5. And so we're just going to go to the sewing machine over here, and I'm laying them right sides together. And each little stack will make its own, you know, its own little set of 5. But we do want to scrap it up. So go ahead and cut all your pieces and just start putting them together. We're starting with sets of 2 like this. And then I'm going to add another 2. Like this. And of course, I would rote sew this and just do the whole thing. Sew a bunch of 2s together like this. And then I'd start adding that 5th one in the middle. And again, watch your 1/4 inch. So now I have some 2s here, and I'm going to open them up, and I'm going to sew these together, or I can add this in the middle, whichever, you know, think about the color for you. Think about what you want next to each other and how you want it to go. I think this orange in the middle will make a great pop, so I'm going to put it right there. And we're just going to sew down here. And I'm going to open it up and I'm going to attach it right here. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do this. Ooh, I like the green in the middle. There we go. And again, watch that 1/4 inch. When you're sewing lots of little strips together, that 1/4 inch matters even more. So this is what you'll have after you've sewn all your 5 pieces together. And you're just going to do that a bunch of times. All right. So once you have these together, now you can cut them into sets of 5. And so I'm going to just straighten up this edge right here. I'm going to do it over here. Straighten it up. There's a little bit of poking out. So watch your lines across here. Make sure they're lined up right. And then just clean up that edge. So you start with a nice clean edge. And then you're going to come over and you're going to cut 2.5-inch strips this way. And if you do make a mistake or your cutting doesn't work out, so this last piece is exactly 2.5, just remember we really only need 32, so you can go ahead and pull in some other pieces, and you know, you'll have plenty of fabric in case you make a mistake. So I'm going to measure this one right here and see if I actually made it to the 2. No, see, it's not quite 2.5. So I know that, you know, that's not going to really work for me as I'm putting pieces together. So what I'm going to do is I have some of these already cut over here, and I'm going to add a piece of this to it like this, just like that. And I'm going to lay this right sides together and sew 2 strips together. In between every block here, we have our iron, we have 2 strips together. And so, and then in between the rows, we just have 1. So for every iron, you're going to need to have these 2 strips sewn together in between each block. And every little square gives you a place to make sure everything is lined up. Alrighty, so let's press this open, just like this. And then this should, in theory, and hopefully today as well, line up with this, and it does. So I'm going to sew this to the left-hand side. You're going to put one in between every other block, and I even pulled it out to the edges. So it made this first little border, but really this is just this little block with its 2 strips sewn together. So let me go ahead and stitch this on, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right. Now we're going to press this down. So then once you get your pieces done like this, let me show you here in the quilt how it works. So you're going to sew your rows together just like this. So you'll have a block with patchwork, a block with patchwork, a block with patchwork, and you want to start it with patchwork as well. That's going to give you a border on 2 of your sides, and it's going to give you your sashings in between every block. Then you're going to sew your, one of these together for the next row. So this is just 1 row of thickness. Everything else has 2. This one just has 1. And you're just going to sew and put in a whole sashing row of those. The only thing we have left now is the top and the bottom. And so we are again going to sew our 2 patch blocks where 2 of them come together. Enough of them so you can go all the way across the top and all the way across the bottom. And what that does is it just gives it an inner border that's completely patchy, which I really like. I like the look of it. And then we add our outer border, which is our cute stripe with our plugs and cords. I just think it comes together so cute. So it makes a quilt that is 71 by 77. The quilting pattern I used on this is sticky buns. So that's a little circular pattern. And one of the reasons I like this pattern for this quilt is because there's a lot of small pieces. There's a lot of 2.5-inch squares, and the quilting will just hold it all together, and it's just gonna, it's gonna last for generations. So I just hope you are as impressed as I am with this quilt. It was really fun to do, and I'm super honored that Janet chose my collection to make her fabric with. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on pressing patchwork from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Hey everybody! Every week I give you a new idea, and we are almost 1 million quilters strong. So join us every Friday for a new tutorial, and if you haven't clicked or subscribed, make sure you do that today. See you on Friday.